Bowl 58 just around the corner. I thought it'd be really fun to go and talk about the other award handed out during the Super Bowl. That is the Super Bowl MVP. A lot of us think of the Super Bowl MVP as a quarterback-dominated award, much like the Super Bowl. And if you think that, you'd be right, though not as much dominated by quarterbacks as you'd think. Since 2000, only 3 league MVPs have gone to non-quarterbacks, all 3 being to running backs. Compare that to Super Bowl MVP, where 9 of 24 Super Bowl MVPs since 2000 have gone to non-quarterbacks. 5 of those being to position players on offense, not in quarterback, and the other 4 being defensive players. That means this is actually a lot more wide open than people give it credit for, and so I thought it'd be fun to go through the most likely candidates to win the award and who I like the odds of that betting services are giving us. But before we get into the video, I wanted to take a quick second to ask you to please subscribe to the channel, ring the bell for the notifications. It really helps us out. We are now releasing multiple videos every week, so if you're an NFL fan and love football, you're gonna love this channel. That's it. Now let's get back to the video. So to note, I'm showing all these as FanDuel odds from Sunday, February 4th in the evening. These odds might move, might change as the week progresses, but rest assured the analysis is still good, barring any injuries. So we're going to start with the best odds, and that is Patrick Mahomes at plus 135. Now, you should not think of this as an indication that the Chiefs are favored in this game. In fact, as at the time of this recording, the Chiefs are actually plus 110 to win, whereas the 49ers are minus 130. They are favored, but still Patrick Mahomes has far and away the best odds, and I completely understand why. The Chiefs have been to 3 Super Bowls in the last 5 years. They've won 2 of them, and in both of those, Patrick Mahomes won Super Bowl MVP. It also stands to reason when the Chiefs win, Patrick Mahomes is almost always the best player on the field, and the news and the ideas around him being their best player, they continue to exist. The narrative is there. He is very likely to win the Super Bowl MVP if the Chiefs are to win the Super Bowl. Where I don't totally love this as a potential bettor is you're only moving from plus 110 to plus 135 by taking Mahomes to win the Super Bowl MVP. Yes, technically it's theoretically possible to win Super Bowl MVP and not win the Super Bowl, but I don't think we've ever seen that happen, and we're not going to consider that a possibility in this video. What that end of the day means is that Mahomes doesn't pay out much better odds, and there's so many things that can happen. There's so many things that can go wrong to cause Mahomes not to win it, even if the Chiefs win it. I don't love the small amount of additional value you're getting out of the Mahomes bet, so I would much rather just bet on the Chiefs at plus 110. If you think the Chiefs are going to win, getting this little value, probably not worth it. After this, we go to Brock Purdy at plus 200. Now, this seems like a lot better value. The 49ers are paying minus 110. Brock Purdy is plus 200. That's more than doubling your money that you win if you call this right and he wins it for the 49ers. But the problem is Brock Purdy, while likely the most valuable player on the 49ers, or at least considered by the media to be over the course of a regular season, he's not often in any individual game. I went through the 49ers' 14 wins in the regular season and playoffs and looked at who likely was the MVP in those games. And of those games, Brock Purdy was only the likely MVP 4 times out of 14 wins. That is less than 1/3 of the time, which is not great odds based on plus 200. Now, I get why Brock Purdy's here. Quarterback is always the favorite to win this award for every team, and I understand why. But the 49ers are a little bit different than most teams, and that is because Kyle Shanahan's offense tends to hyper-target players. What does that mean? Well, it means even when Brock Purdy has a really good game, it might mean that George Kittle had half of the yards and 2 touchdowns, or Ayuk did that, or Deebo Samuel or Christian McCaffrey. It tends to go to all these different players. And so it's not a great bet, for me at least, to go with Brock Purdy just because Purdy tends to hyper-target a guy, and while Purdy might have a better shot than any of Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, George Kittle, I don't think he has a better shot than the combination of them. And that's what matters to me with their odds compared to Brock Purdy's odds at plus 200. And we'll get into their odds in a little bit. The third best odds and the last fairly reasonable odds is Christian McCaffrey at plus 450. Now, before I get into the analysis, I should let you know, I told you earlier there are 9 non-quarterbacks to win Super Bowl MVP, but not a single one of those was a running back. It was 5 wide receivers and 4 defensive players. That doesn't bode well for McCaffrey, but that being said, McCaffrey is a completely different player than a lot of these running backs who have made the Super Bowl. Let's look historically. Most of those teams that make the Super Bowl didn't exactly have great running backs. And those that won Super Bowls with great running backs, something else went on. Think about Malcolm Smith winning it for the Seattle Seahawks when they had Marshawn Lynch. Yeah, sure, Lynch could have won it, but the defense kind of dominated that game. They gave it to the best defensive player. It makes sense. McCaffrey here at plus 450, though, is phenomenal odds. And I mean phenomenal. I told you before that Brock Purdy probably would have won MVP for 4 of their 14 games. And at plus 200 odds, that wasn't great. Compare that to Christian McCaffrey, who probably should have won in 6 of 14 games, including both of their playoff games to date. And he's paying at plus 450. That means he's paying based on minus 130 payout right now, more than 4 times as much by getting him as your MVP if they win the Super Bowl. That's phenomenal odds. Christian McCaffrey is their go-to option. And if you look at Kansas City, they actually have the 8th worst efficiency against running backs, the 8th most yards per carry allowed. They're a really good pass defense, but they're not as good on the run defense. And so McCaffrey might have the ability to run wild. He might be the centerpiece of the Kyle Shanahan offense. And if he is, Christian McCaffrey has a great opportunity to win Super Bowl MVP, be the first running back to do it in the 21st century. And at these odds, I'm not going to lie, these are far and away my favorite. Moving to the 4th best odds, we actually have a massive drop-off to Travis Kelce at plus 1,700. Now, I really hate this bet. I understand the narrative around Travis Kelce. Oh, the league wants to put Kelce in the spotlight. There's Taylor Swift, all of this. I don't deny that might be playing a factor in this being plus 1,700, but I think the bigger factor is people expecting that and people pushing Travis Kelce to do better than he's likely going to do. Travis Kelce's been great in the playoffs. He's been fantastic in the playoffs for the Kansas City Chiefs, but he definitely did look slowed in the regular season, and Patrick Mahomes has always been the kind of quarterback who just throws it around the field. He hits all his players. He hits everyone. He'll hit Rashee Rice. He'll hit Marquez Valdez-Scantling. He'll hit Justin Watson. He'll hit Noah Gray. He's not going to exclusively target Travis Kelce. That has never been Mahomes' MO. Kelce has been on this team for both their previous 2 Super Bowls. He was never really considered for the Super Bowl MVP. And at plus 1,700, yes, this is good odds. Yes, this is much better than what Patrick Mahomes is paying out at. But it's still not great odds because if you're going to go for a receiver of Mahomes, go with better value, frankly. Go with upside. Don't go with the main go-to guy because at the end of the day, we know he's always been the go-to guy and he's never been in the position to win Super Bowl MVP. So I don't love him here. After Kelce, I want to go through the 3-headed monster being the San Francisco 49ers receivers. You have Deebo Samuel paying plus 2,000, Brandon Ayuk paying plus 4,500, and George Kittle paying plus 7,000. These are all long shots, and rightfully so. They should be long shots. As I said, I did the analysis before. Deebo Samuel would have been MVP in 1 game, Brandon Ayuk in 2, and George Kittle in 1. Yes, these are all not terrible value, especially when you compare to Brock Purdy, but I don't love any of these 3. Again, I think McCaffrey's far and away the best bet for the Kansas City Chiefs. That being said, if I had to pick one of these guys for Super Bowl MVP, it would probably be George Kittle. The Kansas City Chiefs have a phenomenal secondary, especially with Trent McDuffie and L'Jarius Sneed on their corners who are likely going to be manned up against Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, respectively. That being said, George Kittle might have some open field, especially with Nick Bolton primarily going to be having to be in coverage duty on Christian McCaffrey. That's going to leave Kittle with maybe a slightly better matchup than some of these other guys, and Kittle every once in a while will go for these 3 touchdown outbursts. I mean, that's probably what it's going to take to win Super Bowl MVP, at least 2 touchdowns from Kittle, but it's possible, and at plus 7,000, I like him better than I like Samuel or Ayuk, but I don't love any of these, especially when I compare it to Christian McCaffrey, which I think far and away has the most value. On the flip side, you have the other Kansas City options, those being Rashee Rice and Isaiah Pacheco paying plus 7,000 and plus 3,500, respectively. For the same reason I don't like Travis Kelce, I don't like Rashee Rice. There's just not really a world where Mahomes hyper-targets one receiver. He's never been that type of quarterback. And if I was actually going to go for a receiver that could be hyper-targeted, I'd probably go with Marquez Valdes-Scantling. Not because I think he's going to win it, not because I think he has better odds, but because he's such a long shot at well over 10,000, and he's the big play guy. Yeah, maybe Mahomes goes for 2 big plays to Valdes-Scantling. He gets 2 big touchdowns, gets 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. All of a sudden, there's a possibility. But Mahomes is never going to hyper-target a possession receiver like a Kelce or like a Rashee Rice enough that I see them ever winning Super Bowl MVP. I don't love their path to it. Compare that to Isaiah Pacheco, who again, I don't love, but Pacheco actually has a reasonable path. They could run the ball a lot. This is a better defense than we've ever seen the Kansas City Chiefs have, and a better running game than we've ever seen them have in the Super Bowl era of Patrick Mahomes. Based on that, Isaiah Pacheco could, if he can score early, continue to run the ball out, grind it out. If they can be front runners in this game, lean on Pacheco like they have done a lot of this season, there is a world where Pacheco could win the MVP. Add in a Patrick Mahomes interception here or there, maybe not even due to fault of his own, and all of a sudden, you have a recipe and a path for Pacheco to win it. Again, I don't love it as much as McCaffrey. That's still my favorite. And a running back has not won this award in the 21st century. But these two teams both do seem like teams where the running game could be very vital for their ability to win. And so don't count out either of these two running backs. I do like Pacheco's odds here. Again, I still think Mahomes is probably the best odds if you expect the Chiefs to win. I just don't like that Mahomes bet because it doesn't pay out that much. That's it for all the primary skill position players. Obviously, there's other skill position players and there's other defenders, but I don't totally love defenders. Looking at the top 2 defenders, you have Nick Bosa at plus 10,000 and Chris Jones at plus 14,000. Obviously, these are great payouts, but it's so tough to predict when a defensive player is going to win Super Bowl MVP. We have 4 of them that have done it. And yes, you have guys like Ray Lewis and Von Miller who were the defensive studs for their team who won it. But you also have Dexter Jackson and Malcolm Smith who were mediocre, maybe a little above average at best players for their teams who won Super Bowl MVP in spite of never being Pro Bowlers, in spite of never really doing anything else in their careers. Now, I really don't like Bosa and Chris Jones primarily because they're pass rushers. If you look at that list of defensive players who have won the award, only one, Von Miller, was a primary pass rusher. Pass rushers don't tend to win this award because this award doesn't go for guys who get sacks. This award goes for guys who get turnovers. Yes, Nick Bosa and Chris Jones could absolutely get forced fumbles, and that's how they get turnovers. But that's much more likely to come from guys in the secondary, but it's so hard to predict who's going to do that. And more importantly, who's going to get a pick 6. That's what a lot of these Super Bowl MVP guys do get. They get pick 6s along with sacks and forced fumbles and other things. These guys aren't likely to get defensive touchdowns. Yes, they could get a turnover, maybe 1, likely not 2, and 1 is probably not enough to win this award. I don't love it. If you're going to throw your hat in the ring on a defensive player, throw it on a Tre'Davious Ward, a L'Jarius Sneed, a Fred Warner, guys who could get sacks, but also could get interceptions, could get pick 6s. But again, stay away from this. There's a reason it's over plus 10,000. You're probably just throwing your money away. If you're going to do it, put $1, hope for the best. That's it for this video. I thought it'd be a fun topic to discuss as we wait for Super Bowl 58. Stay tuned to this channel later this week where we'll be posting a Super Bowl preview talking about the game, who I think's going to win, how I think the game's going to go, and what each team needs to do to win this game. You don't want to miss that. But with that, I'll see you all later. Peace!